Welcome to this section on core animation in Xamarin.ios. Indeed, it also applies just to iOS, not just Xamarin. First, I'm going to walk you through where you can use core animation. And you've already come across it, probably implicitly, and you didn't realize, when you do things like, for example, push a view controller on top of another one. Then I'm going to show you where you can set these view controller animations. Then we'll look at animation of views themselves, so we can expand, move, and change the color of image views, for example, buttons. It doesn't matter what it is, as long as you can set a view on it, you can animate it. Now these are all covered under the UIKit class. I'm going to take you a level deeper into core animation, and that, the first part of which is implicit. So we can control a few more parameters inside implicit core animations, but if we need complete control over an animation, like animating something over a path, then I'm also going to show you how to declare explicit animations. So let's begin. Animations. They are a key element of iOS. So if I've got my simulator open and I'm clicking things, you'll notice there are nice animations that go with everything. When you open something, it expands out. When you click something, it swishes over. These are all handled by the core animation framework. So let's learn how to use animations. Let's click New Solution. Let's have a single view app. Call it whatever you like. I'll call mine Animate. And then let's close our app delegate. Let's open up viewcontroller.cs. Now the first place you can use core animations is inside of the UIKit class. Maybe you didn't realize it, but every time you do something like push a new view controller on top of an old one, it's actually using core animation but abstracted away through UIKit. So this allows us to have access to default animations like the swishing side to side, pushing controllers, page turns, if you recall from our page-based apps before. Up to now, we haven't had to do a lot of work to get these animations out. In fact, we've had to do no work. So in this section, we're going to look at using first the UIKit, so the high-level versions of animation. Then we're going to go a bit lower and go to the core animation versions. So we're going to need to have a using core animation. And core animation covers two sections: the implicit animations, which require a little less work, but you have a little less control over it, and the explicit core animation, which require quite a bit more work, but then you have absolute control over everything that happens. Core animations are heavily used inside of view controller manipulation in iOS. So let's see how we can explicitly change some of these parameters. Let's open up our main storyboard and create a simple button. There we go, button, drag it in. I'll just put it near the top corner. And let's give it a name, of course, of button, and save it. Right, inside of our view controller, we're going to use this button to open up a new view controller. So let's click our project, right-click, add new file, click on iOS, scroll down, and go to view controller. Let's call this second view controller. And iOS will do the heavy lifting for us and create the class. Okay, I'm just going to close that view controller because we're not going to put anything inside it. Then let's create our button touched event. So button.touchup inside plus equals, and let's create a method for it. Okay, inside of the method we're going to fire up this new view controller. So let's have second view controller VC is equal to a new second view controller. Now what we can do with this view controller is add some of these core animation properties. By default, it will slide onto the screen and slide off when you click back, but we can change that. What we're going to do is have a modal transition style for this one. So let's have modal, let's have VC dot modal transition style is equal to a UI modal transition style dot. And now we have some options: cover vertical, dissolve, flip horizontal, or partial curl. I'll have partial curl. And now we've set this animation. So this is one of those hidden, if you will, animations inside of UIKit that we just kind of take for granted these days. Finally, let's show this view controller. This dot present view controller async. And let's have the view controller. And yes, we definitely want to animate it. Now let's hit play, and we should get a nice partial curl function when we click that button. So I'll click the button, and we get a partial curl. And because I have made this a modal transition, it means I'm loading my view controller on top of another one. I'm not actually pushing it, so we don't get this navigation bar at the top, and we don't get the back button. Okay, that covers how to add a different kind of animation to your view controller. I'd advise you to experiment with these, but please don't overdo it inside of your app, because apps that have too many animations, in my opinion, look really tacky and overdone. Just try to use animations where it makes sense and where it feels natural. Let's look at animating a view. First of all, let's get rid of this button touch-up inside code because we're not going to use that anymore. Let's open up our main storyboard and remove the button from inside there. Okay, save the storyboard and close it because we're going to add things programmatically from now on. Inside of our view.load, we would like to add an image view. So before we do that, I'm going to right-click my resources, add a file, and I'm going to drop in that horse image that we had in the previous image section. This could be any image you like, it doesn't have to be this one. Let me drop in this top one. I'm going to copy it to the directory, and I'm not going to bother making an image set because this is just a simple tutorial. Let's create the image view programmatically. Let's have image view 1 is equal to a new UI image view. This requires a CG rect. And let's drop this at 0 in X, 100 in Y, and give it a height and width of 50. And close off our brackets. Then let's set our image view dot content mode equal to content mode dot scale aspect fill. Finally, set our image view dot image is equal to UI image from our file named horse.jpg. Right, so we have our image view set up. Let's add it to our view. So you can either go straight to add, or you can click view.add. And let's add image view 1. Right, so our image view will display in more or less the top left corner of our app and be very small at 50 by 50. We're making it small so we have somewhere to move it, to animate it to. Now let's grab the point that the image view currently occupies at its center. So var pt is equal to imageview1 dot center. And this gives us, if we hover over center, a CG point. So a value in X and a value in Y. We're going to use this later to reset our image after our animation. So here we come to the important part of our animation. And this is the actual animate section. Now I could write this within this view did load section, but at this point the view hasn't actually been shown yet. So if you started animating, your user might miss it. So what I'm actually going to do is make this image view a public variable, not a public variable, a class level variable, first of all. So image view 1. Then I'm just going to remove this var so we have it accessible to the whole class. And then I'm going to remove this point by cutting it and just tidying up. We actually want to start animating when our view has appeared. So we can override the view did appear method. So now we can definitely see everything. We can paste in our center point and we can start to animate. UIView dot animate. This requires some parameters, of course, a duration, so how long the animation lasts, the delay until we start it. You can set some options. You give it the action during animation and the action on completion. So first of all, we need a duration. And let's have this running at 3 seconds. We can have a delay. We'll have this at 0. We want it to start straight away. We can set some options. And these are of type UIView animation options. So UIView animation options. Then we have our whole bunch of options to choose from. And these are the transition options. So we have auto reverse, curve ease in and out. Let's have curve ease in and ease out. So the animation will start slow, speed up, and then slow down at the end. If we want to add some more options, we can add our pipe symbol and add UIView animation options. Let's also have auto reverse. So it'll run the animation and then also reverse it for us. Then we need an animation argument, and this is going to be delegated to the actual animation. So it's saying, what are you actually going to do here? Let's have imageview1 dot center is equal to a new CG point, and let's move our image about. So first let's get the view bounds get max x, and this is a method, and this gets the maximum point of x from our current view. And then we're going to subtract the image view dot frame dot width over 2, and it asks us for a y that we're going to move to, and this is our center point y, and that's why we selected it up here, so we can reference it here, pt dot y. Close off our brackets, end our line, and finally close off our curly brace, and let's have a comma for the next argument. It wants a completion delegate, so let's fire this off to resetting our image view center. So image view 1 dot center equals the original point, and this just makes sure that everything resets to the right place. Let's close off our brackets and we are ready to go. So I'm going to hit play, and what I'm expecting to happen is this image to move up and down. We have a slight problem with get max x. Let's right click it, resolve using core graphics. Right, so now I'll hit play. So I'm expecting this image to animate itself and move around on one axis, which is the x-axis, and it stops once it gets to the maximum value of the x-axis. So of course that only runs once because we've only called it once, but you've now created your very first animation. Of course, we're not limited to just moving it around. We can do other things. For example, we can change the alpha of our image. So I'm going to remove all of this inside of the animation section and have imageview.alpha is equal to 0.1f. The alpha is the amount of see-throughness, if you will, of the image. So 0.1 is almost see-through and 1 is opaque. So on completion, of course, we want to set our alpha back to 1.0f, so it is opaque again. Now I'll hit play, and we should have this slowly fading and then coming back image. So it fades out, and it comes back. And of course, if I turn off auto reverse, and then hit play, let me just show you what that looks like. So this won't reverse to its original condition. It'll fade out, and then on completion, it goes to this 1F without a nice transition. So in my opinion, it's always worth having that auto reverse when you want to go back to an original animation. Okay, the supported properties for your animation in UIKit are the frame, so the frame that encloses your image or whatever item it is. Also the bounds of that item, the center, as we have seen, alpha, which we've also experimented with. We can also change the color of it. So what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to comment out this image one, so we can just set the background color of the image and be able to see it. Inside of our animation in UIView.animate, let's have .background color is equal to UIColor.red, and then let's have background color at the end equal to UIColor.clear. So let's see what happens with that kind of animation. I wonder how iOS will handle changing of colors. Okay, it more or less acts kind of like the alpha version of our animation that we had. But let's say I set my image view background color equal to UIColor.blue, not clue, blue, and then hit play. So now we're going from blue to red over time. Let's see how it handles that. Blue, and you'll see it kind of mixes the colors in to each other. So you can have very nice effects with colors and animations if you so wish, but again, please don't overdo them. Just do them where it makes sense to have an animation. In fact, the Apple guidelines do say don't overdo animations. Only use them to help the user know where they are. Alright, so in summary, in this section we've added an image view programmatically. We've discovered how to animate something once the view has appeared on screen, both in position. We could also change size, color, alpha, and its frame. So far, we've looked at core animation using the UI kit. But we can go a bit deeper, and we can go directly to implicit core animations. So I'd only advise you do this if you really have to. Always use UIKit if possible first. To use core animations, we have to understand a little bit about view hierarchy. Now views, if I hit our animation option, sit on top of something called a layer. And layers are what's actually animated, not the views themselves. So we need to understand that because the layer is where we're actually going to add animations. We can access a layer by having view.layer property. And you'll notice this is of type CA layer, which I believe is core animation layer. Directly accessing the animations on the layers gives us a little bit more control over what can happen. So let's see this in action via example. From our last open project, let's remove all of this image view code and remove it from view did appear. Okay, the first thing we need is a class level variable that creates a layer. So a CA layer, and we will call it layer. Then we need some code to add our layer inside view did load. So layer is equal to a new CA layer. We have to give it some bounds. Layer.bounds is equal to a new CGRect. And let's have this right at the top, 0,0 and 50 by 50. Then it needs a position. Layer.position is equal to new CG point 50, 50. Okay, so all I've done there is create a new layer, and instead of a frame, I've defined some bounds and a position instead. We can have layer.contents, so this is what's contained inside it, and we can directly place a UI image inside of there. So I'm going to select my horse.jpg. And don't forget your quotes, just like I have done. There we go, horse.jpg. Then let's position that image. And instead of content mode, like we've used before for the UI image view, this is slightly different. We need a layer.contents gravity. And this allows us to set the gravity of our item. So we want CA layer dot gravity resize. So you'll see we have the same sort of top left, resize aspect fill that we have in the content mode of the UI image view. So I think I will set this as aspect fill. Then let's have layer dot, and let's put a border on it. Just to introduce you to this concept of borders, we can have a width of 2.5 f, and we can of course have a layer dot border color equal to UI color dot, let's have brown. Now we have to convert this to a core graphics color for this animation to work. Then finally we need to add this layer, so view dot layer dot add sub layer, and we pass it over the layer. Okay, so now we have our layer which has an image, and we've added it as a sublayer of our main view. Now let's get to animating it. So inside of view did appear, we want a core animation transaction, and we call begin on this. Then we need to set some properties for the animation. So core animation transaction dot animation duration is equal to 10. Let's have a layer dot position property equal to a new CG point, and let's transition this to 50/400 so it'll shoot down our screen. We can also change the layer border width as part of this animation. So I'll make this 6F. And of course we can change the border color equals to UI color dot maybe red CG color. And then finally, once we've set all the properties we want to animate, we call our CA transaction dot commit. So we open our transaction, we perform the animation that we want, and then finally we commit that animation to begin. So I'm going to hit play. I have a slight error here. Cannot implicitly convert to CG image, and this is because we need to change this to a core graphics image, so .cg image. Then we hit play and everything should be fine. So now we should have this implicit animation going on. We have our horse and it's dropping down to the bottom. But you'll notice the frame is also changing color. So I'll stop that and run it again, and just watch the frame changing from brown to red and increasing its size pixel by pixel. Okay, so that animation in core animation gives us a little bit more control than the bundled in UI kit versions of animations. But of course we have a fair amount more code and we have to start working with these layers. So this will add a lot of complexity to your program and its animation, which is why I say always try to use UI kit if you can. In the next lecture, we're going to expand on this implicit animation and make explicit core animations that allow us to control a few more things and give you greater creative freedom. Last time we looked at implicit core animations where we had a begin transaction, a setting of our animation and a commit. However, if you want even finer grained control over your core animation, you can call it explicitly. So inside of our view did appear, let's remove this cat transaction, but let's leave this layer set in view did load because we're going to animate that layer again. So inside of view did appear, let's get our original CG point, and we will call this from point equal to the layer dot position. So that grabs our current position of our layer, and we're storing this so we can reference it later and use it. Now I've talked about having finer grained control, and one of the finer grains that you can have is creating a path for your animation to follow. So let's go CG path. Path is equal to a new CG path. Now we're going to add some lines to this path. So path.add lines, and this takes an array of CG points, So let's have new CG point array, and let's populate it with some values. Let's have it from the from point we pulled out before. Then let's create a new CG point, and let's take it to 50,400. Then let's have another point on here, and let's have, I don't know, 150,50. And let's have an ending point, CG point, which is 200,300. Why not? Close off our braces and our brackets, and now we have a path that kind of zigzags using straight points. Now that we have that path, we're going to create a core animation keyframe animation. So this is CA keyframe animation. Let's call this anim equal to, and first we have to cast this to a CA keyframe animation, and then we pull out from our CA keyframe animation class, and we say dot from keyPath, and it asks us for a path. So let's just type this as position. Then we have to set the path. So anim dot path is equal to the path we created earlier. And we need a duration. Anim dot duration equal to 3. And that would be seconds. Finally, all we have to do is add the animation to the layer. So layer dot add animation. We pass it over the anim, and it asks us for the key, and this is the one we set earlier as position. And then once that fires, that is going to start our animation and run it along this path. So let's hit play. And we have a slight error. What is my error here? Oh, we need a new CG point here. Okay, hit play. We should be good to go. And now we should see this image sort of bounce around our screen. And then once it's finished, it pops back to its original place. So bear that in mind with animations. To stop it popping back to its original place, underneath our from point, let's have layer.position equal to a new CG point, and this is going to correspond to the final point in the path. So 200, 300. And so now when the animation finishes, it's going to leave it at that position. So it pops up, off it goes, does its thing, and it stops there. So that's just a very basic explicit core animation, and I'd advise you to go and read up on this if you want to know more, if you require this kind of animation capability. You can imagine that if you're going to make a drawing app or something similar, this core animation class is one that you'd use quite often. If you want to go even deeper with drawing, you're going to have to go towards the core graphics or OpenGL or something similar to that, which is a lot more work and requires a lot more understanding. So I've just touched on this core animation concept here, so you get a feeling for the 3 levels that you can use for your app. Congratulations! You finished this section on core animation in Xamarin.iOS. First, I ran you through where you can actually use core animation, and I showed you a few examples that you've actually come across already without realizing. Then I showed you how you can set the animation of view controller transitions. We looked at animating views, and all of these were performed within the UIKit class that uses core animation but abstracts its complexity away from us. Then we went a level deeper, and we learnt about implicit core animations, which allow us a bit more control over the animation itself. And finally, to have the ultimate in control, we learnt about explicit core animations, and we created a simple app that allowed us to animate an image over a path.